Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to God's Blueprint for Raising World Changers. I'm Amy Hayes, the creator of this workshop and founder of Raising Amazing Kids. And this is the video that a lot of parents are anxious to hear because in this video, I'm going to share the discovery I made in the scriptures where God showed me that the way we are parenting is actually causing the problems we're experiencing with our children. And not only that, he began showing me how he intended us to raise our children and how it's so rigged in our favor that it's actually difficult and takes a lot of work to mess it up. And believe me, I meet Christian parents all the time who are working really hard and getting poor results. So let's talk about a little bit about what led up to this discovery, who I am, and why I'm passionate about getting this message out to Christian parents everywhere, because I believe it is a game changer for the church, and it will make a massive difference in our ability to bring the kingdom of God to earth. So I made this discovery about 5 years ago, but my story started a while before that. See, I didn't get saved until I was 34 years old. I already had 5 children, and I had learned to parent effectively from the world. I had my first child when I was um, uh, 19 and a half years old. I had to think for a minute. Uh, Not even 20 years old yet. And I didn't know anything about parenting. I just knew that I wanted my daughter to be raised in an environment where she felt safe, protected, loved, and important. And everything went great for about 18 months. You think you're just going to love your kids and they're going to love you back and everything's going to be fine. But soon enough, we all learn that that isn't the way it works. And so, about 18 months old, when they begin to get that voice and mind of their own, she began running my life and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't want to revert to being harsh and controlling and overbearing. I wanted to be able to engage her peacefully. And I felt like there must be a way. Well, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that was true for me. I ran across an ad for a parenting class. And I'm talking about an ad in a newspaper because this was long before the internet or even texting or emailing and Facebook and all of that, where we have information overload nowadays. But my oldest daughter is now 43 years old. And so this was a long time ago. And I see this ad in the paper and I thought, my goodness, I didn't know you could learn how to be a parent. So I signed up for the class, and the very first day, I came home with tools that got me different results, the results I wanted. And that's when I realized two things: that I was in control of the results I was getting, and that I could change my input and get different results, and that it wasn't my daughter that needed training so much as it was me. And so I became like a parenting book junkie. I began reading everything I could get my hands on about parenting, some things I liked and some things I didn't like. So fast forward, about 14 years later, I'm 34 years old and I get saved. And I already had 5 kids, like I said, and I'd been very successful at using these peaceful techniques for engaging my children's cooperation. And they were turning out very nicely. Well, I come into the church and I was a little taken aback, to say it lightly, about how Christians parented their kids. It seemed very overbearing and controlling and that authoritarian, my way or the highway kind of approach. And I thought to myself, do they know they're ruining their kids? But at the time I had 5 kids I was raising. I didn't feel like it was my problem. And so I just kind of went my merry way and left everybody else to themselves. Plus, I didn't want to take on these centuries old paradigms around parenting that existed in the church. And so I went on my way. And then a few years later, actually, I guess about 9 years later to be exact, through a personal experience, the Lord spoke to me and told me my life purpose, which was to mentor parents. And so once again, I didn't want to take on the church, and I began just kind of quantifying what it is I'd done with my children that had been so successful. And by then I'd had 3 more children for a total of 8 children who are all now grown, and I have 8 grandchildren as well. So I have 8 and 8 right now, and my youngest is 19. And he has special needs, so it's kind of like I have this eternal child I get to practice on and be reminded what it's like to have small children. So anyway, about 5 years ago, through another personal experience, the Lord made it very clear that He wanted me to address parenting in the church. And so I thought, okay, well, then you're going to have to show me in your word what it really says about parenting, because I see how Christians are parenting. I hear the verses they quote, but I know that it doesn't jive with anything I ever used on my children, who all have turned out very well, stable, successful adults with stable families of their own, much more stable than my life ever was. But that's another story for another time. And so I began looking in the word and asking the Lord to show me. And, the first thing I said was like, there really isn't much here about parenting. To which the Lord audibly chuckled and said, audibly in my spirit, Amy, the whole book is a parenting book, because it's about your Heavenly Father's interactions with His children. And of course, that had opened up my mind to read the scriptures in a whole new way. For example, the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. Why do we exempt our children from that? Anyway, that's another story as well. But it's true. Some of the basic concepts of Christianity about how to treat other people, we don't even treat our kids that way. So anyway, as I began reading more deeply into the scriptures, the Lord took me back to the beginning, where everything went awry, to the two trees in the center of the Garden of Eden. And I know many people don't even realize there were two trees. We know about the one that God said don't eat from. And it was actually that tree that opened my eyes up to what we've been doing that's sabotaging our success as Christian parents. And so I go back to the scriptures and I said, okay, God, I know these two trees represent the two covenants, the old and the new covenant. And by the way, the working title of my book was Graceful Parenting, Parenting Under the New Covenant, because I felt like the way that Christians were raising their children was very punishment oriented, which has to do with the old covenant. You do bad, you get bad, you do good, you get blessed, or you do bad, you get cursed, you do good, you get blessed. And I felt under the new covenant that there must be a better way. So that's what led me back to these two trees. And I thought, well, there isn't much there, but I'll go read it anyway. And so as I'm reading along about these two trees in the center of the garden, I come to, this verse, Genesis 2:17. And this verse says, and of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day you eat of it, you will surely die. Well, I had read that verse 1,000 times. And honestly, the name of that tree was long and confusing. And in the past, I just skimmed right over it because I didn't know what it meant. But in the context of parenting, as I read the name of that tree, the knowledge of good and evil, I stopped in my tracks. I thought, well, that sounds like right and wrong. And why are we teaching our kids right and wrong if God said that leads to death? In fact, He said, in the day you eat of it, you will die. And I just stood there stunned. I thought, oh my goodness, no wonder that we're failing as Christian parents, that we're teaching our kids right and wrong and expecting it to bring life when God clearly said it will bring death. So this opened up a door to a whole world of revelation about how God really intended us to parent. You see, there was another tree there all along called the tree of life. And when we parent from that perspective, which is completely different than this other tree, the tree of death, I call it, which is what it was. But God was gracious enough to tell us what that fruit was that caused death. It was knowing right and wrong, knowing good and evil, because before that, Adam and Eve didn't know the difference between good and evil. They didn't even know evil existed. Everything just was. They were innocent, much like our children are when they come into the world. They don't know right and wrong, good and evil. In fact, in many ways, we try to protect their innocence. But we didn't know that by teaching them right and wrong, we were actually destroying it and actually destroying them spiritually. Because you see, God said, in the day you eat of it, you will die. So we know something died that day. And so as I studied this out, I realized that what happened was Adam and Eve's spirits died. And then it also says that the eyes of their understanding were awakened. And you can go back and read it for yourself. But what Satan told them was actually true. He said, oh, no, you'll be like God. You won't die. You'll be like God. You'll know right, good, and evil. Well, that was a knowledge that was reserved for God. And when man has that knowledge, it causes him to operate from that natural understanding of what we judge to be right and wrong. And we'll get more into that as we go along in the series. So don't let it confuse you, and don't let it discourage you from listening to the rest of this training, because I will make it very clear about how we've been parenting and why it's failing. In fact, the next video, we're actually going to look at why this approach to parenting, teaching our children right and wrong, is doomed to fail. And there are 3 very specific, definable reasons that you'll be able to easily understand. It's nothing weird or fringy out there on the edge. It's just obvious things that we haven't known, or we haven't put together. And the Lord just graciously has shown me these things so that I can share them with you and help you to raise your own world changers. So join me for the next video, where we're going to dive into this deeper, and we're going to see exactly why teaching our children right and wrong is a failed method of parenting, and it's actually causing our children to reject God. It's pushing them away from God, just like it did Adam and Eve when they ate that fruit. What did they do? They hid from God. And so anyway, we'll talk more about that in the next video, so don't miss it. I'll see you there.